Some guys are needle phobic and some guys just won't do the cream. There are protocols that are just not viable for certain people. So when guys start on TRT, the problem is that a lot of them are not doing very well because they've been hypogonadal for a while, which tends to ruin your metabolism, your mental health.
But you're gonna be on this for a long time. So we got to figure out what can you do, kind of like the lifestyle stuff. Like, are you gonna pin yourself every day? It's like I went from twice a week to every day to every other day. Now I'm 3 days a week, and most of my guys are 3 days a week. Like you're saying, 90% of it is how do you get someone to be consistent and will they do it? You know what I mean? And I don't really like starting guys on cream for two reasons. One is they're paying me money. And if they miss up their cream application and they go in for a lab test and like, Doc, I just paid you hundreds, why is my testosterone not moved? And I'm like, it's because you probably didn't play the cream or you forgot the day before or whatever. I'm like, if you stick this needle in you, this stuff is going on your skin, your testosterone levels are going to go up. So I don't know what your guys, would you like starting guys, but have you found you like one method or the other?
I like having both in the toolbox. And this is something that when I'm mentoring clinics or physicians on this, I really like to teach them that we need to be able to do both. Some guys are needle phobic and some guys just won't do the cream. We get a lot of guys in Australia who work in the mines, so they're like fly in, fly out, shift work, 14-hour days. Like there are protocols that are just not viable for certain people. So I've been very blessed in my career that a whole bunch of people who I've looked up to over the years have, ended up, becoming friends of mine and colleagues of mine. And, it's very humbling to not be a medical doctor and be respected by a bunch of medical doctors in the field. It makes me very proud. And Dr. Keith Nichols has taught me a lot about cream. And he calls me DHEA Dave, and I've started calling him Cream Keith. I haven't called it that to his face yet, but I will.
I'm gonna clip this one and send it over to him on Instagram.
Yeah. So he's been such an advocate for cream for a long time. He's made a lot of his videos in terms of like he just makes very educational videos on YouTube, and that inspires me to make very similar content. So I'm very heavily influenced by him, and it's been very interesting over the years. We kind of butted heads over a bunch of topics, which I'm sure we'll talk about soon in terms of pregnenolone and DHEA, and then eventually kind of came together in terms of being like, hey, I was actually wrong about a bunch of this stuff. And we had a really good conversation in terms of finding a really nice middle ground. And but he's taught me a lot about cream. And Neil Rousier has also made some fantastic information about cream as well. And I got very into the idea of cream in terms of really wanting to understand, is the increase in DHT therapeutic, detrimental, significant?
Yep.
And ultimately, as someone who is, I started this at 25, I'm 32. I've got a lot of years on this ahead of me. I want the best option for myself. And when I moved to Eastern Europe, getting injections here was not as easy as I'd hoped. Getting cream was easy. So I had my hand forced. I had to swap to cream about 2 years ago. And when I swapped to cream, I was very surprised in that I noticed literally no change. Nothing. No change. I got blood work done. Blood was the same. Everything felt the same. I was like, oh, great. Same thing. So in my clinics, we work with cream. In Australia, we work with cream and injections. In Europe, we primarily work with cream because it's logistically much easier, but it's important to have both in the toolbox. The advantage of cream for some guys. So when guys start on TRT, the problem is that a lot of them are not doing very well because they've been hypogonadal for a while, which tends to ruin your metabolism, your mental health. And a lot of the time people have maladaptive coping mechanisms. They feel like crap, so they live like crap to feel better in the short term. Human behavior. So when guys come in and start TRT, some of them are in really good shape, but it's very rare to have guys who are sub 15% body fat, eating clean, not drinking any alcohol, exercising, getting plenty of sunlight. Those guys, when you start them on injections, no problem. You can do 2 injections a week. 3 is always better, but 2 injections a week, they'll typically get away with. And they'll come back in 12 weeks. They'll be like, best thing ever, no side effects. That's not the status quo. A lot of the time, the status quo is 25 to 30% body fat, drinking 5 to 10 standard drinks a week, eating, more takeout than they should, not cooking their own meals, maybe not doing enough exercise, not hitting 10,000 steps a day. And when you take a healthy testosterone level of a fit 21-year-old and put it into a 40-year-old with those behaviors, sometimes it doesn't metabolize perfectly. And people will go, well, the solution for that is blocking the aromatase. And that's like saying, well, if the fire engines are coming and you don't like the sound of the fire alarm, we should just get rid of the fire engines. Yeah. So when we are in this situation where men are systemically inflamed, and again, Jay Campbell and Keith have been, big kind of advocates for this for a number of years, is that the testosterone can sometimes not metabolize favorably. And when we look at the outcomes of what happens from systemic inflammation, we get an increase in the production of aromatase because estrogen is anti-inflammatory, like cortisol. They're not bad things. They're just things that also have deleterious side effects in the body. But we also get a reduction in 5-alpha reductase. So we tend to get increase in prolactin, increase in estrogen, increase in reverse T3, reduction in T3, reduction in 5-alpha reductase. This is not an ideal kind of metabolism profile for hormones. So when we come in with a cream that doesn't go through the liver, because the liver is where the ester kind of bottlenecks so that we can have that slow release effect. When the cream goes straight into the bloodstream and has more exposure to 5-alpha reductase along the way, we get a higher expression of 5-alpha reductase and a higher conversion to DHT. And for guys who are in this situation where they would often have these estrogenic side effects when they start treatment, when these guys take the cream, they tend to actually get a really positive response to treatment. And we'll often get guys come back and they'll come into the clinic and, we'll make the recommendation and the doctor will say, look, like we believe the cream would actually be a better option for you because you'll get less side effects. And they'll go, oh, I've heard cream doesn't work. I want injections. And, we're compounding the 20% transcranial cream that works. And we go, look, just give it a try. And so we get these guys who come back and they're drinking too much. They're not exercising. They're overweight and they should be having a bunch of side effects. And they come back and they go, and we go, how's the treatment going? They're like, oh, putting the cream on's really annoying. And I'm like, is that the only problem?
Yeah.
And they're like, yeah, it's annoying. And I'm like, bro, we've just made a miracle here. If you've just started TRT, it is completely normal to feel overwhelmed and confused. There's a lot of new territory to cover, and there is a lot of conflicting information. I wrote TRT 101 so that you can have everything that you need to know in an instruction manual in one place that you can refer back to, that you can have all the questions answered before they even come up. TRT 101 is my best practice approach for TRT from start to finish, and it contains everything that you need to avoid all the challenges and pitfalls that I've seen come up in my clients over the last 5 years. You can check it out via the link below. The cream works really well for the patient population who would have side effects from injections. And one thing that we'll often do is say, look, we want you to start on cream. And then if you get your body fat down and you get your habits in order, if you want to go for injections, you can give them a try. But from a outcome standpoint, we find that the cream is a great option for the guys that would usually be the trouble cases. And that's where I think the cream really shines.
I get you're saying that metabolically unfit guy. I'm actually pretty fortunate. Like I'm in California and Idaho, and most of my guys, I get a lot of young, healthier guys. Like most of my guys are 25 to 40. They go to their primary care. Their test is 400 and they're like, 28 and doc won't treat them. So I've been fortunate in that, but I definitely think that's something worth doing, cream in that more metabolically unfit person. That makes a lot of sense to me. And it was funny. I think it may have even been you and Dr. Keith talking, and I've watched a lot of his videos on the cream because the DHT thing was scary. So I have on injections gotten my T up to not on purpose, and maybe there'll be a couple questions in here, up to 2,000. I don't feel much difference if my toe, and this is even with my free. Once my free's over like 15, I'm okay. 20, 25, I'm feeling good. I don't notice a difference if I'm 35 or 40. And I know some people feel better up there. I had that conversation. Risk versus reward. We're watching blood, viscosity. Again, other controversial area we may or may not get to. And I think my DHT was like 100 when I had my total test up to 2,000. And then on the cream, it did. I'm like at 700 or 800 and my DHT is like 200. And I'm like, all right, I better be pretty confident that this is, and I've heard kind of Keith's like, dude, that's in the blood. are you having these? And I didn't. Like, I didn't get any getting back to that ECG thing. Oh, DHT causes acne. I'm like, dude, my DHT's like tripled and I don't have anything on my shoulders. Whereas with a little bit of ACG, I did. So I'm like, But I do agree. I personally prefer doing a shot 3 times a week than I apply the cream twice. I don't know if you guys do it once. You just once a day is easier, but I really like doing 3 clicks in the morning and then I do 2 before the gym. So I don't know if you found, is that something where you guys are at, or?
So again, I give all credit to Keith here, is that I think across the board, stability is king. So twice a day cream applications, I think, is objectively better than once a day because you're not getting a roller coaster. Some guys don't like the inconvenience of putting it on twice a day. I like the routine part because I do it when I brush my teeth, and I have that freedom to know that if I do stuff up and forget to put it on in the morning, then I've still got it in my system from the night before. Whereas if you're putting up once a day and then you forget to put it in the morning, you don't, people think they're going to feel a big crash. You don't. Dr. Neil Rousier talks about how testosterone likely agonizes the receptor for longer than the half-life, which makes sense to me. Because, and when I was thinking about it and I was talking about it with a friend, I was like, well, if testosterone didn't have an effect for longer than the half-life, when young, fit, healthy, 21-year-old men go out drinking and partying, as soon as they start drinking alcohol, they get hypogonadism symptoms. They don't. So that to me makes sense. But I like the twice a day application for stability. The thing where I think it runs into issues is if men are sleeping naked with their partners, because then you can have that transference. That's the only downside of it. And my general rule of thumb is that, I think that intimacy and the loving relationship between a man and a woman is really special and really important. So if that's important to you, I don't want to sacrifice that. But putting on a pair of underwear could solve that problem. But I think otherwise once a day is totally fine. Is it optimal? No. Is it acceptable? Yes. I kind of put like once a day cream application on the same level as twice a week injections. It's like the minimum that you can get away with and still have it be acceptable. But twice a day is optimal for cream, and 3 times a week I think is optimal for injections. I think daily is ideal for injections, but people aren't going to do that.
You have to understand is that testosterone does not by default make you a masculine man. It facilitates you becoming that man, but it will not do that work for you. How does testosterone impact how you feel, and how are those mechanisms occurring in the brain?